one of this three-part series with Greg Care of Mallie Accounting and Advisors.
Our subject today is something that many people have heard of, but not everybody knows what it is. So, what is a 1031 exchange? Hi, everybody. Joy Marie here with Corey, and we are here today with Greg Care from Mallie Accounting. They are tax advisors, consulting, and valuation experts. Welcome to the Inside Scoop, Greg.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Greg was referred to us by our financial advisor, Frank Hennessy, who we've been working with some time now. And he grew up in Pottstown and been living in Schwenksville for the past 14 years with your wife, Nicole, and your 6-year-old daughter, Caroline. And you have a baby on the way.
Yep, little boy on the way.
That's
so
very exciting.
Yep. Due in January.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fun. So every episode, we ask each guest to share with us the 5 words that best define them. And we couldn't agree more, could we? With the 5 words that Greg chose for himself, which are hardworking, disciplined, strategic, laid back, and fun.
Gotta have fun in there.
Agreed. Especially when you're dealing with other people's money.
Yeah.
When you have hard work in there, you got to have fun.
Yep.
That's
true.
the truth.
Absolutely.
I mean, you guys have a very compact seasonal job, sort of, right?
It used to be seasonal. Now
Yeah.
it's year round.
Right.
Same for us, too.
Yeah.
That is true. That is true. So we want to talk about accounting and how it relates to real estate, obviously, since that's what we do. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is
1031 exchange.
right.
Yes.
Very popular right now. There's been some changes over the years, but overall, the theory is it used to be able to do it with personal property, so that was one change where now you can only do it with real estate. And what it is you can sell your real estate that's an investment property, and you can 1031 it, which is the code section, which is defer that gain into another replacement property. Okay. So there's a lot of rules involved, and we can go over them high level, but one big change, 2023, PA, which was one of the states that did not allow it, now allows it, 2023, moving forward. And it can be also, it is real estate, but there's some other real estate investments that you can also 1031 into, like Delaware Statutory Trust or Real Estate Investment Trust, oil and gas, land, water rights. So there's other things, but the most common is your real estate investment properties.
Okay. Who would be, quick question, who would be a candidate for doing something like this? What would be like an ideal scenario for somebody to use this in per se real estate?
Yep. You own a second property that's an investment property. You want to sell it because the market is right, or you have another property that you have your eyes on.
Right.
You can sell this property and roll the gain and proceeds into your replacement property.
Okay.
So then the steps taken are there's a qualified intermediary that you need to get engaged with first. There's one right down the road here in Collegeville.
Good to know.
Yeah. And that's the starting point, because you need them prior to settlement. They get everything taken care of. They get all the paperwork, because they are the ones that are going to take the proceeds at settlement to make this transaction qualified.
So it's a third party.
It is a third party.
Okay.
Yep.
And I think it's important for our viewers to understand that this really only qualifies to a second home or an investment property.
It can't be personal property.
Right.
Yeah.
And which we'll get to actually in part 3 of the series. We'll get into that personal property type of tax
Implications.
Yeah, good
sure.
word.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about, for someone who has maybe never even heard of a 1031 exchange, what's the benefit of it for them, other than the tax benefit, and how long can it go on?
So you can keep 1031ing multiple properties, but the rules are your replacement value has to be equal or greater than what you're selling. So that's step 1.
Okay.
And if it's not, you can do a partial 1031 exchange and pay a pro rata gain on that. But the goal would be, let's say it's $1 million property, you're selling it. If you get a replacement property, $1 million or more, you can defer 100% of the tax. Now,
So it's the value of the property, not what you're making on the property.
So it's the value, and it gets a little more complicated because it can be debt too.
Okay.
So if you have a $1 million property with $500,000 in debt, your replacement value has to be similar with a similar level of debt, because if you have a less amount of debt or more debt and you take cash at settlement becomes taxable.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I think this is a very complicated subject for so many people. I think that there's a lot of people out there that would like to maybe start investing in some real estate and maybe be a landlord, and then you start adding in some of these more complicated things on the other end. what do you say to somebody who is maybe intimidated by the concept?
Yeah, you got to reach out to your advisors. So you reach out, to your accountant. That would be your first step, and they can walk you through the pros and cons, because maybe it doesn't make sense. There's could be situations where, depending on the replacement property, they may be subject to paying the tax anyway.
Right.
So why lock it all into the next property? So it could go both ways. You really got to look
risk,
at your cost basis and your replacement value, and there's a lot of factors that go into it.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that we pride ourselves on is that we do actually surround ourselves with experts that we can refer, because it is something that somebody should absolutely speak to an expert about and not necessarily wing it.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Because you could, jeopardize the entire transaction while locking your money up into the new property.
Right.
So,
right. Or buying the wrong property for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
We've seen that happen.
Yep, 100%.
I would say, how do you get out of a 1031 exchange? How do you end it? I mean, I think that's something I think about all the time is you can keep rolling it over and rolling it over and rolling it over into the next property and the next property. How do you effectively exit a 1031 cycle?
Yeah, so there's a tax consequence to doing that. So if ending it would be selling that property that you rolled your 1031 into and not rolling it into a new property and taking the cash.
Okay.
So the downside is when you roll the gain into a new property, you're reducing your cost basis of the replacement property. So your cost basis is very low.
Right.
So when you sell that property, you're paying tax from the previous sale along with the gain on this sale.
Okay.
So there's not a benefit to getting out of it. You're going to want to stay in it unless
Sure.
you need the cash.
Well, at some point you're going to age out of it. Hopefully you're able to live long enough to age out of it. And then, of course, part two is we're going to be talking about inheriting and
Correct.
gifting real estate and things like that and the implications of something like that as well. But if you want to get out of it, is there a plan that you guys put together that says, all right, with the next one, we want to minimize this in order to minimize your exit strategy tax implication?
Yeah, if you want to get out of it and you want the cash, there are some vehicles out there. Like I said, some certain Delaware statutory trusts that you can roll, the gain into and try and get, cash out of that. There's not many options. So I mean, that the benefit would be eventually, using that property to have your kids inherit.
Sure.
They'll get the step up in basis.
Yeah.
And avoid tax completely.
Perfect.
And I think the only other thing we didn't mention was just like the timeline for rolling it into another. How much time do you have between the two properties?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, so you have 45 days from settlement to identify properties.
Okay.
So identify your replacement properties, and some of them you don't have to execute on. You just have to identify them.
Okay.
And you have 180 days to execute the transaction with the replacement property.
Okay, so it gives you that little time, like a little buffer. So you get the proceeds from one, you have 45 days to identify another property, and then you have from that point on 180 days to settle.
Correct.
Okay.
And in a market like this, that's tough because there's not as much inventory as there could be. And so 45 days is not a long time.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
I think it does throw people into some,
Oh, people are scouting before they, it's
Before
like
they
before
sell.
they go sell. Yeah, because
100%.
things sell so quickly, especially multi-units and things like that. But
Absolutely.
that's another whole podcast.
That is a whole another podcast.
And this is a little more complicated, but you can do a reverse 1031 exchange too. It costs a little more money. You definitely need to work with the qualified intermediary,
Right.
but you can effectively purchase a property before selling your property that you wanted to replace it into.
Got
Great.
it. That makes
Okay.
perfect sense. Well, if you have any other questions, and I'm sure that you do, on 1031 exchanges, Greg is your guy. He'll be able to explain it to you in a way that is most beneficial to you and what you're trying to do. And of course, we're here for you when you want to buy and sell.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Greg.